point scoring in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or having a point system in general in that martial art, has always been a contentious issue. One of the reasons is that in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we traditionally had more of a submission-only style of rule set. And also, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu found a home in like Vale Tudo types of combat as well, where it was more of an anything goes style of format. Point scoring is kind of similar to wrestling, and people even to this day aren't necessarily fans of having a point system. They liked that Jiu-Jitsu had that differentiation of being submission only, or where the submissions were valued above all else. For the purposes of this video, we're going to be looking at my thoughts and feelings towards the point system and how I am actually in favor of it. And we'll be going over 3 reasons why I feel that it is necessary. Firstly, the point system in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu makes things more palatable to spectators. Spectators can kind of see what's going on without having previous knowledge of the martial art. For instance, if this grappling match is taking place and an onlooker really doesn't understand what's happening, what they will understand is, say, a scoring system of 5 points to 3 points. That scoring system will create like the ability for them to become involved in what's taking place. They didn't understand anything previously, but now they know that some person's ahead and some person's behind. And Jiu-Jitsu, that isn't necessarily easy to find, because we might think that the person on top is ahead of the person on bottom. But we know with this martial art in particular, that the person on bottom can have great chances to defeat the person on top. So the person on bottom might be winging submission holds. They might have a guarded position and are throwing these things out there, while the person on top is very much so like on the brink of defeat. I feel that it is in some way, in part, because of our wrestling roots, that we see the person on top as being the person who is almost always dominant against the person on bottom. And that makes this martial art kind of unfamiliar to us, intuitively. Now, if we study it, then we're on board. But not everyone who watches the sport necessarily studies it. For instance, I might be competing, and I might involve people who don't necessarily do the art themselves. Like, I might have family present, and these family members might not have a clue as to what's going on, but they can understand, watching the point board go up, what's actually taking place, who's actually in the lead, and what's going on from that perspective. So it gives them some way to assess things. Now, my second reason as to why I feel that the point system is good for the sport is that whenever I am training athletes early on, I can show them like a position's worth a set amount of points. And that can give them the means of looking at it from 2 different sides. If I'm in the bottom position and someone is trying to get to mount, then that means one thing is that they're potentially putting 4 points on the board, which is a lot of points in our scoring system. So this gives them an indicator that they need to defend against this position. that from our sport perspective, it's a high scoring position and they need to make sure the person doesn't get there. Now, when they are on top, this also gives them the inclination that they need to pursue mount and try to find that key scoring position. Now, the reason that this position of mount was given the point value of 4, which could seem arbitrary looking into it, it has to do with that in any given context, this is a great position for us to be in. When these positions were ascribed their point value, first of all, is that they had great striking potential. That is what they were looking at this, when they were looking into this art, the people who decided this point system, when they looked into this position, they were thinking of the striking potential of mount, say, or the striking position of back control. Now, even if I have an idea of jiu-jitsu from like a self-defense standpoint or what have you, even if I'm not in favor of the point system, I still need to make sure that I'm not allowing myself to be mounted and I'm teaching other people how to mount, or I'm trying to attain mount for myself, because it's a very critical position that either I have dominance from or someone has dominance over me. And thus it doesn't really hurt me to have an even deeper understanding of mount being important by saying that from a sport context it's worth 4 points. Now, I also had a little way of which to compare these two, using two different things. And a common comparison I always make is that of chess. I'm always, in numerous of my videos, I'm always comparing jiu-jitsu and martial arts in general to chess. And in chess, you might not be aware of it, but it also has a point scoring system. Like, for instance, a knight is worth 3 points, and a rook is worth 5 points. Now, also, people don't potentially like the point system. They think that it's all about, ultimately, that checkmate of winning the game. And the points just kind of don't necessarily lead to that goal. If I'm points up on my person on a chessboard, that person can still beat me because it's ultimately about checkmate in chess. In the same case, if I'm up points in jiu-jitsu, this person can still ultimately beat me because it predominantly, the biggest thing with jiu-jitsu is our submissions. That's really kind of what jiu-jitsu is about, is getting that submission hold. It's finding that way to actually put someone out. Just like chess is about the checkmate, jiu-jitsu is about the submission hold. So, just keeping with chess for instance, if I know that such and such is worth points, then it just gives me a deeper understanding of my game, and it'll influence my choices that I make. I'm just not going to give a rook for a pawn, for instance, or I'm not going to give up, from a jiu-jitsu perspective, I'm not going to give up a guard pass, because if someone passes my guard, that gives them 3 points, meaning that should be a very difficult thing for them to do, as the most they can score from a single action is mount, which is 4 points, and back control, which is 4 points too. So if a guard pass is worth 3 points, that's very close to the highest scoring action they can get, and that's definitely not something I want them to achieve. I want to keep my guard from being passed, just as I want to make sure my rooks aren't taken. So now that we're there, let's go past the chess stuff and go into our last reason. So my last reason is that places have to host these events for jiu-jitsu. They have to have these competitions, and when they're figuring these things out, it helps them to know how long this event is gonna last. If I have a submission only rule set without a time limit, then I could run into cases where this event lasts way longer than what was anticipated. This is bad for organizers. And in my experience with my one and only competition in a submission only rule set, I didn't have at all a great experience. I found that with this rule set, our event was extending so far past how it was thought to last. This thing was going on forever, that the rule set mid-tournament was changed. I was competing as a white belt, and in this tournament, in the rule set I agreed to, there were no leg locks, there were no wrist locks, and things of that nature on the rule set that I agreed to. However, mid-tournament, this thing was lasting so long that we had another rules meeting, and they said leg locks are on the board. As a white belt, I could put someone in a knee bar, and also I could be placed in a knee bar. That changes a lot because both your knee bar and your heel hook are very, very dangerous submissions, and they're very quick submissions that can really impact your whole career going forward if these things go wrong. So, had I known that these submissions would be on the table, I would have trained quite differently for this, and I would have also potentially considered participating at all, to be honest, because I don't particularly want to look for those submissions or be on the lookout for them with someone else trying them on me. Especially in a tournament context where people are just yanking things. Now, in my very brief experience dealing with a submission-only rule set, I was not at all a fan based off of my particular event. But that could have been a one-time thing, and not at all the norm in those given contests. But as this video is about kind of my experience and thoughts with this particular topic, I kind of have to list that this wasn't a good thing for me. And also, with my experience as an athlete, I hated the submission-only rule set because we were there for so long before I actually competed. And there's just, of course, nothing to actually do at these things except watch. But if you watch, you're gonna analyze, and that'll make you even more tired. So I really wasn't a fan of submission only. But anyways, these have been my thoughts on this topic, but also be sure to let me know what you guys think of the point system in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And if you are fans of it, or prefer the submission only, or even a different classical format for Jiu-Jitsu. But thanks so much for watching, and be sure to take care.